Sorry, that was my alarm going off. So téléphoner with an E acute and téléphoner with the infinitive. And telephoning, you'll see the telephoning, téléphonant. Okay, so before telephoning, he looked for the number. So the answer here is number 3. Categorically, if you have a preposition, so de or à or pour or whatever, and you then have a form of a verb, it will be in the infinitive. Okay, it will be in the infinitive. If you had a preposition and then you then had a verb which wasn't in the infinitive, you'd need something else like pour que, je puisse, which would often generate a subjunctive, for example. So in preposition plus a verb will be the infinitive. The next thing is avant de, you should know, so it's the same person before plus and then an infinitive because it's the same person. And a nice trick to remember is if it's the same person, it will involve an infinitive. Après avoir, être, plus your past tense, there's your infinitive in the middle, or avant de, there's your infinitive on the end. Okay, if you don't understand this, go to my channel, type après or avant or before and after, and a load of videos on this will come up. So the answer is avant de téléphoner, the last one, er, the infinitive. Il a cherché le numéro, he looked for the number. Okay, number 10. Si elle était, si elle avait, si elle a su la réponse, elle me l'aurait dit. So, si elle était, si elle avait, si elle avait su la réponse, elle me l'aurait dit. So, the trick here is to read the whole sentence, and you'll notice in the second half that we also have an auxiliary. So when we have the word si, as I told you earlier, it doesn't automatically guarantee imperfect and conditional, but we bring up the possibility that it's our hypotheticals. Present hypothetical, past hypothetical. And as I told you earlier, you either have two with the imperfect and the conditional. So if she, what's the example here? So if she knew, she would say, donc si elle savait, elle dirait, or if she had known, she would have said, which like I said is referring to the past. So si elle l'avait su, elle l'aurait dit. The way you work out what the, so you could think of it as pluperfect and conditional past, but it's not the best practice to think about that. Just think, look, if I've got this hypothetical shit going on, I basically either need if plus was, and then the other clause will be in the would, or if plus the auxiliary in was, or if plus the auxiliary in would. So that would mean I need one from avait or était and one from aurait and serait, because verbs are obviously going to be have or be in the middle. So for this one then, because you can see the fact that there's an auxiliary at play, we are using the pluperfect in the conditional past. If she had known the response. Now that might not be a form of the verb that you know so well. One of the things you will see with the imperfect and the conditional is that in these contexts, and the imperfect conditional auxiliary in these contexts, is you will use verbs in a format you might not be familiar with. So you might be a little bit more comfortable saying elle pouvait rather than elle a pu, elle devait rather than elle a dû, elle avait rather than elle a eu, although all of them obviously have a place in the passé composé. They do have a version where you would use that. That then would mean that you'd be a little bit more comfortable saying elle a eu, elle a su, elle a pu, elle avait pu, elle avait dû, elle, you know, whatever, and popping it into the pluperfect. So the answer therefore is obviously number, si elle avait su la réponse, elle me l'aurait dit. If she'd known the answer, she would have told me, okay? Because it's a hypothetical. Number 11. Quand je suis, quand je serai à l'université, je ne vivrai plus chez moi. So, always look at the second clause to work something out. So, I will no longer live at my house. When? So in English, this is just basically, do you note, if you are using the word when in French, be careful. If the when is referring to the future, then the verb will need to recognize that future. And in English, we don't do that. When I'm at university, I will no longer live at home. We will use the English next week, when I'm with you. So be very careful. Your when could be in the present tense. When I'm with you, I am happy. Present tense generally. Quand je suis avec toi, avec vous tous, ouais, je suis content, I'm happy, je suis ravi. Next week, when I'm with you, quand je serai, I will need the future. So this isn't a great video. If you type in when, I'm in bed for this video actually because I couldn't be asked to get out of bed. So it's one of the words, there are other words that do this, like dès que, for example, avant que even does it to a degree at times. There are some words in French where if you just talk about the future, you need the future, even if in English you talk about the present. And this is just one of those. So in other words, when I will be at university, you need to recognize the fact that you will be at university is in the future. So quand je serai, spelt AI, because we are the future. Remember, the future spellings match the have, not the would. Okay? Lovely, lovely. Quand je serai à l'université, you'll often in French say à la fac. You should have à la fac for A level, which is short for faculté. I will no longer live at my house. Number 12. Voilà la femme que, qui ou dont j'ai parlé. So this links to number 1. What did I say when we talked about number 1? Que is when the woman that you have just mentioned isn't then doing the verb. So it's when you're going to bring in a subject. Well, no, it might be the same person. So for example, je pense que je vais. That's the same person. But you're bringing in a subject pronoun. You're bringing in something to do the verb. So yeah, you might go, okay, you've talked about a woman. And then you're bringing in j'ai parlé. So that's a change. So that would be a que. But you have to reverse the situation. If you said I spoke about the woman, j'ai parlé de la femme, then in that case, there's a de there. So now there are plenty of words for about. There's à propos de, au sujet de, sur, whatever your context is. But de is our basic bitch on this. So if you say I spoke about something, it's parler de. All right. It's rather annoying because certain words you have a muscle memory that does different things. So you might have parler à, you might have parler de in certain situations, like you'd have penser, penser à, penser de. So the basic bottom line is if you are using de in your normal sentence, which goes verb into the object, then when you go object and then refer to the verb, you will need a de. So je parle de la situation dont... Sorry, you will need a dont. Je parle de la situation dont je parle. Je me souviens de la situation dont je me souviens. So I can see why you'd be led down the dark, tempting path of que, but it's dont here. Voilà la femme dont j'ai parlé. Again, that could be about people or objects. It makes no difference. It's just when the verb clause would otherwise have used a de. All right? A clue in English is if you were to end in the preposition, like the woman I spoke about. Because if it's, here's the woman that I spoke, you'd have about lingering on the end. Besoin is another good one there. So the woman, let's not say that. Let's say the wine I need. I need the wine, j'ai besoin du vin, le vin dont j'ai besoin. All right? Good. Type in dont into my, or relative pronouns into my channel. All of this will come up. Next one. Sans dire, sans disant, sans dire un mot, j'ai continué à travailler. Number 13, sans is a preposition. People forget it's a preposition. À and de pull a lot of focus, but it is a preposition for the simple reason being that it can go then before a noun. So in the house, from the house, without the house. So what did I say earlier? Prepositions, if they're going to be followed by a verb, will be followed by the infinitive, unless you had to change it, unless you needed, like, for example, again, like I said earlier with pour and pour que, sans que, which would also generate the subjunctive mostly. So, in other words, without saying a word, sans dire un mot, the infinitive. And they're not daft, they've popped disant, which is saying the gerund again. No, so sans dire un mot. Notice you can interrupt said preposition and said infinitive. So without doing it, sans le faire. Without seeing me, sans me voir. You could go in the past, sans m'avoir vu. You could pop an auxiliary in there, but it's sans me. So it's sans plus infinitive. So without saying anything, sans dire un mot. So without saying a word, I carried on working. Notice it's continuer à. Continuer de does exist, but for my mind, it's a little bit more formal, and I like continuer à in everyday conversation. If you want a nice little hack, décider de, essayer de, and then the two C's, commencer à, continuer à. All right? So, je me suis coupé. This person's got their shit together. I can see where they're trying to tempt you. So, je me suis coupé en faire, en fait, en faisant la vaisselle. Okay? So, I cut myself. Now, it is number 3, faisant, the gerund. Because en, although by definition a preposition in that regard, it is en takes plus the gerund. In speaking with Luc, en parlant avec Luc, you know, you will. We're very ing light in French. We use a lot of ings in English. So I'm speaking, je parle. There's no je suis parlant. After speaking, après avoir parlé. There's no parlant. There's no speaking. Before speaking, avant de parler. Without speaking, sans parler. Speaking French is fabulous. You know, parler, we really do like the infinitive. But we do have the ing, the ing becomes ant form. In a couple of places. We have it in adjectives. Luc is motivating. Luc is stimulating. Luc est motivant. Luc est stimulant. We have it in this format in speaking with Luc. Again, quite formal, but this is for A level, so you would want this for exercises and essays. So in speaking with the French government, en parlant. Yeah, okay. So the answer, therefore, would be, which verb were we in? En faisant la vaisselle. Pronunciation faisant. It's just something we tend to do. We don't tend to say faisant. En faisant is a bit more common, okay? Notice we're saying vaisselle, not vaisselle, okay? Because it's two S's. So in doing the washing up. So I cut myself doing the washing up. Ce sont, we love ce sont for a start. More on that in a moment. Ce sont les garçons qu'elle avait vu l'autre jour. So firstly, notice ce sont, because it's the boys. We'll come and say it's the boys. And again, in French, young people tend to say, who is it? You know, it's the boys, c'est les garçons. But it should be, the plural of c'est is ce sont. If you are referring to a plural noun, you need ce sont. Notice as well that it will be ce sont rather than ils sont. So c'est, C''est and CESONT are used when you are introducing a noun. So for example, he is French, il est français. We are using français as an adjective there. Yeah? So il est français, he's a French guy, c'est un français. They're French, ils sont français, they're French guys, ce sont des français. So the boys, ce sont les garçons, it's the boys that she had seen. Now this is known as the preceding direct object, or l'objet précédent direct, or nowadays it's known as le complément direct. It basically means if you have any one of the tenses where you have an auxiliary. So if you're doing this for A level, you will have now come across il a vu, il avait vu, il aura vu, il aurait vu, subjunctive qu'il ait vu. You might even have come across il eut vu, but I'm not too sure. Depending what you're doing for your literature component, anything that's got an auxiliary and therefore a past participle, if the thing your verb is referring to, which would need to be direct, has preceded, gone before the last word, the past participle, then if the thing that's gone before is feminine or plural, you need to add an E or an S or an ES on the end of your third word. That could include a pronoun. So for example, I did it, je l'ai fait. If it were a feminine thing, je l'ai fait. The boys that I saw, les garçons que j'ai vus, VUS. Okay, because the boys are plural. The girls that I saw, les filles que j'ai vues, VUES. I saw them, je les ai vus, if it were boys, VUS. I saw them, je les ai vus, even if your actual speech doesn't mention the thing in full. So if somebody else says, did you see the girls? And I say, yes, I saw them, oui, je les ai vus, it will be VUES. It doesn't bother you orally for the most part, but be careful, because if you have a past participle which ends in a T, a consonant, for example, a T, an S, for example, then it will change it. So je l'ai pris, je l'ai prise, je l'ai fait, je l'ai faite. Okay? So the answer, therefore, ce sont les garçons qu'elle avait vus, VUS, because boys are plural and masculine. Okay? So it's the boys she saw the other day. Ils vivent en France. My gosh, this one is so common. Ils vivent en France pendant, il y a, depuis 10 ans. Ils vivent en France pendant, depuis, il y a 10 ans. Okay, so the first issue here is that a lot of the time in French, when talking about something that you are still doing, you will use the present tense. Yeah, so, I've been a French teacher for whatever, 15 years. One of the ways of saying that is, ça fait 15 ans que je suis prof de français, because I'm still a French teacher. Okay, so the issue generally around pendant, il y a, depuis, pour, all of this business. Pendant not exclusively, but where you've got a problem. So I'm talking about where you've got the debate, because when you know where to use pendant, you haven't got a problem. So pendant or pendant que, during, all of this kind of business. But when it comes to time, pendant will generally be referring to something in the past. It's just better French to say, so, in the past. So there are both sides, but generally for A-level. So pendant 10 ans is referring to the past, generally as far as you're concerned, okay? Il y a is referring to a moment in the timeline. So il y a 10 ans means 10 years ago. So not from then onwards, yeah? Not from then onwards, but basically 10 years ago, point on the timeline, il y a 10 ans. Pour is basically ongoing and forward, so I'm going to go into this pour, whatever, for 2 minutes. And depuis is when you've got that sense of in the present tense. Even if in English, that would be sort of acknowledging the past tense. So for example, because this is in the present tense, depuis. So I've been doing something for a certain amount of time, depuis is your word. If you go to France, you look above shops, depuis and then the year that it was opened. So if there's just this sense of something coming from the past up until now, rather than a completed thing in the past that was and how long it went on for, that would tend to be depuis. So in other words, ils vivent en France depuis 10 ans. Okay. Now, this next one, they're not stupid. They pop them together. This is saying, 10 years ago, because it couldn't be for 10 years. I used to go to school. So in other words, why am I explaining why it's depuis, why it's il y a? 10 years ago, I used to go to school. Il y a 10 ans, j'allais à l'école primaire. I used to go to primary school. Because it's a point on the timeline, 10 years ago, that was an action that I used to do. Okay? Yeah, that's the il y a. So it's the point on the timeline. So 10 years ago, during that period, used to go to school. That's why we've got il y a. Okay? Of course, il y a means there are, but in this context, there we go. Lovely. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Joanna, my lovely cleaner. So, il faut que nous arrivions arriver à 7 heures pile. Very straightforward. Il faut is a necessity. Il faut que takes the subjunctive. Do not get confused with all the different usages of il faut. Il faut plus infinitive, il faut parler, it is necessary to speak, it is necessary to arrive. You could look at the group and say, okay, demain, il faut arriver à 7 heures pile. Tomorrow, one has to arrive at 7 o'clock on the dot. Pile on the dot. But il faut que plus a subject would give you the subjunctive. So the subjunctive of an ER verb, I hate saying ER verb, an A verb in my method. As you know, the only people that would change it, the subjunctive, are nous and vous, and that will go to the imperfect endings of ion and ie. So, il faut que nous arrivions. So get that in your mouth. If you weren't sure in an essay whether it was subjunctive or not, or what the subjunctive of said verb would be, get rid of the subject and just write il faut plus the infinitive. Yeah, so it's necessary that you do it. Il faut que tu le... and you're not sure of the subjunctive, which would be faire. Il faut le faire. Just go straight to the infinitive. Not to be confused with il faut plus an object, as in I need a coffee. Il faut un café. Il me faut un café. Okay? Je crois que tu as un gros problème de compréhension. So I think you have... She's very thorough, Joanna. She'll be on that part of the corridor for quite a long time. The best thing that ever happened to me was getting a cleaner with OCD. She's marvellous. Lovely. I think that she's attacking the door. We'll brace. Actually, I shouldn't make jokes like we'll brace for impact, not with what's going on in the Ukraine. So I think that, so the trick here is a lot of these questions are things that you go, oh, I remember doing that. I remember doing something similar. I remember doing something similar. So je crois que, your brain goes, oh, somewhere that was subjunctive. There was a place that je crois was subjunctive. Well, it's when there is a negative, okay? it's when the quoi is negative, not when the verb that comes after the quoi is negative. So if it's I think that you have a problem with understanding, please, if you don't understand why we're using gros there rather than grand, go to my channel, type gros, look it up. Mais je crois que tu aies, as, and gros. It's je crois que tu as. Because opinions with croire, when they are affirmative and not negative, do not require the subjunctive. Full stop, period. Okay? So, je crois que tu as un gros problème de compréhension. Certain verbs don't take the subjunctive even with que. How do I start every video? J'espère, video, we speak in Spanish. J'espère que vous allez bien. Non, j'espère que vous alliez bien. All right? So, je crois que tu as un gros problème de compréhension. Good. Number 20. Quel, now you might have read this as Jean, as in the name, but it's quel jean, because it's obviously a pair of jeans. So, quel jean préfères-tu? Notice we're using the question word quel because we are referring to a noun. So, quel jean préfères-tu? Notice in an inversion, we have a hyphen. We hyphenate inversions, as in the rather famous French grammar. Was it Voltaire or, Derrida or Hugo? Who was it that said, voulez-vous coucher avec moi? Or was it Lady Marmalade? Voulez-vous hyphen, okay? If you invert verb, then the subject, you'll have a hyphen. So, quel jean préfères-tu? Cela, celui, celle, qui est bleu. The first one is not really possible there. It's celui or celle. So let me remind you, this is referred to in the video called the C word. The C word. So, if you are saying the one which is, then you are basically pronominally replacing the thing. And those words are celui masculine, celle feminine, ce plural masculine, or celle feminine plural. Do not confuse celle-là, that one feminine there, with cela, which is that one. Okay, so ceci and cela can stand alone. You'll need them at A-level, guys, because it's the elegant way of saying ça. That bothers me, cela m'énerve rather than ça m'énerve. Great for essays, okay? I have a problem with that. J'ai un problème avec... Oh, God, that's so nice when it's finished. J'ai un problème avec cela. I have a problem with that. So, cela... So, in other words, you need to visually divide your mind between ce, ce, cet, ce-double-te, say, ces, or cet, cet, when it's got the demonstrative before a noun. So this girl, cette fille, this boy, ce garçon, this man, cet homme, cet, this woman, cette femme. And then you need the three words which can exist on their own. Ça, ceci or cela. Ca, accent, ceci, cela. Then you need the four which exist referring to a gendered or a plural, singular or a plural thing. So that is the ones that we're on about here, okay? So go to the video if you don't understand. So the one which is blue, because it's not that, it's the one which is referring to something everybody else in the room. Which one do you like? Oh, the one that's blue. The blue ones. In this case, the blue one, because it's French for a singular gene. So if you are referring to something that sounds like you're not saying the name of something, then a lot of the time that will be celui, celle, etc. Cela is a very basic concept of that. So I suppose that could be a noun. So there are times where you could go, right, Luke, well, why do I say celui rather than ça? It's why do you in English say that one rather than that? It's just a more elegant way of speaking. Watch the video on the C word. So it's celui because it's the masculine formal. Do not be pronouncing it celui. No. J'ai fait tout ce qui, ce dont j'ai pu pour lutter contre ma maladie. J'ai fait tout. God, I know how he feels. So j'ai fait tout ce qui, ce dont j'ai pu pour lutter contre ma maladie. This is a very nice subject. If you are using the word what, not exclusively, but if you are using the word what in French to talk about, if you're using the word what in a non-interrogative way, if you're using the word what to not ask a question, as in, I like what you're wearing, Luke, I like what, Tess said, I like what is happening, then your choices will largely be between ce qui and ce que, but we'll also bring in ce dont, ce à quoi, and there are also others, ce avec, whatever. There's other versions according to what your preposition was. So the basic bitch is a little bit like qui and que. if you are carrying on into a verb directly with no introduced subject pronoun, so I don't like what is happening in Eastern Europe, to say in the least, je n'aime pas ce qui se passe, because after that what word, it's not qu'est-ce que or quel or quoi or any of this stuff, because it's not a question what. It's I don't like this thing that's happening in Eastern Europe, you know, otherwise known as atrocities. So, je n'aime pas ce qui is when it's like qui and que, the same grammar as qui and que. If you carry on into a verb directly with nothing in the way, no, without a new subject pronoun, you will have ce qui. You can have something in the way of it. You know, what annoys me, ce qui m'énerve, ce qui m'énerve, but you're not introducing a new subject pronoun, okay? You're not introducing somebody to do the verb. Ce que is when you are introducing a new subject pronouns. I like what Tess says. J'aime ce que Tess says. Tess dit. Ce dont is when the verb that comes next would have used a de, like our friend dont from earlier. So if you wanted to say, I know what you need, if it's tu as besoin de quelque chose, that is a verb that uses de. So I know what you need. Je sais ce dont tu as besoin. I can't say ce que there because the verb in question would use de. We did speak about earlier, you know, you spoke about whatever, the girl, the situation. Tu as parlé de la situation. I know what you're speaking about. Je sais ce dont tu parles. That's the elegant version. You'll hear de quoi in all kinds of slangy situations, but it's ce dont. So on this occasion then, j'ai fait tout ce que j'ai pu, because there's no verb with de. Yeah, it's just basically I have done everything that I, you know, I have been able to. You know, it's just the plain old ce que. Yeah, because because you are bringing in a new person, but you're not bringing in a new person doing a verb with the de. Okay. Also, notice if your question here was, well, why have we even got a ce qui, ce que? Why haven't we just got qui or que, everything that? If you use the word all and then you go into that, you need a ce, a ce. So I have everything she made was amazing. Tout ce qu'elle a, not tout que. You can't go tout que, tout ce que, tout ce qui, tout ce que. Good. Let's keep going, Luke. Je n'ai rien. Let's just move the screen down. Je n'ai rien. That's better. So, je n'ai rien de dire. Je n'ai rien quoi dire. Je n'ai rien à dire. Okay, this is a very, 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 very common expression. J'ai rien à dire. The basic version for this, the basic argument, is how to give you this in a method that will be useful for you. If you're carrying on from your infinitive after the infinitive and you're going to tell us what the infinitive is referring to, you will often tend to see a de. So for example, it's, you know, easy to find a teacher. Il est facile de trouver un prof. Rather than, you know, a teacher is easy to find, you know, whatever, un prof est facile à trouver, because it's referring to what has gone before. We will often use an à before your infinitive. So that's a nice little trick. It's not foolproof, but it does work generally. So in other words, if this is really patronizing, but the letter A precedes the letter D in the alphabet. So if the infinitive is referring to something which has gone before, we'll often use an à rather than a de. So that's why we've got expressions like quelque chose à manger, because the manger is referring to the quelque chose which has gone before, rather than quelque chose de manger. Okay, good. You do have quelque chose de as well. You know, something nice, quelque chose de bien, quelque chose de beau, quelque chose de whatever. But yeah, good. So in other words, j'ai rien à dire. I've got nothing to say. Elle veut que je vienne, que je viens, que je venir. So quite simply, vienne. Yep, this is the subjunctive of the verb to come, because want, need, doubt, fear. Impersonal, emotional, generate the subjunctive. If you don't understand why, then can you please just watch my video on the subjunctive. A basic as want verb will generate the subjunctive. In terms of the conjugation here, notice the subjunctive very closely resembles the they form. So they come, ils viennent, V-I-E-N-N-E-N-T. Notice pronunciation-wise, vient, viennent, you are in a soft, hard verb. Yeah, so notice also the pronunciation issue with the N's. If you have an N in a word and there's a vowel after said N, it tends to go higher. So at the end, la fin, as opposed to like fine. You know, Luke has fine hair, also baby fine hair, cheveux très fins, fine feminine, fine. Yes, so vient versus vienne, all right? So, elle veut que je vienne à la fête. She wants me to come to the party. Well, I know I'm amazing. And I'm very good at washing up afterwards. I don't, number 24. Je ne pense pas qu'il me connaît. Notice the accent, by the way. Qu'il me connaisse. Qu'il me connaît with an S. So, je ne pense pas, we spoke about croire earlier. I don't think generates the subjunctive. End of. Because you're not stating it affirmatively in a declarative way is basically the answer. But it's, you know, I don't think he knows me. I suppose one could argue it's doubt, want, need, doubt, fear. Even if you said, oh no, I don't think he knows me. Even if you said that with some certainty, that would still be a subjunctive expression. So that is a nice thing for you to have in your A-level orals. So if one of the things that you get marks for is coming back at the, you know, the propositions that the teacher, that sounds wrong, the suggestions that the teacher puts to you, steady on Luke, that you then counterbalance and go, well, I accept what you're saying, but, you know, and so, yeah, so I don't think that's correct. You know, if you were saying something like, it's difficult, and you say, I don't think it's difficult, ouais, je pense pas que ce soit difficile, it'd be subjunctive, soit. So, je ne pense pas here, where have we gone? Qu'il me connaisse, subjunctive. Again, notice that your subjunctive is coming from the they form. Je connais, tu connais, il connaît, nous connaissons, vous connaissez, ils connaissent. Je ne pense pas qu'ils me connaissent. Connais with the S is the je or the tu spelling in the present tense, first and second person, and there we go. Elle a travaillé à Paris now. Pour, pendant, or depuis. What number was it? Which number was it when we spoke about that earlier? Which number was it when we spoke about that earlier? I can't find it without going all the way up. Oh yes, number 16. So I generally said if we're referring to the past, yeah, pendant. She worked, what is it? She worked in Paris. What's the example? My eyes are getting tired. She worked in Paris for 6 months, okay? I'm going to work in Paris for 6 months. Alors moi, je vais travailler à Paris pour 6 mois. I've been working in Paris for 6 months. Ça fait 6 mois que je travaille à Paris. You know, je travaille à Paris depuis 6 mois. But in the past, pendant. The papers I need are in the drawer. The papers I need are in the drawer. Again, what do we need to remember? If you see besoin, there's in a verb context, let's be honest, because you can have it as a noun. There is a need. Il y a un besoin. Of course, it's a noun. Okay, hence that's why we use have with it. If ever you've noticed expressions that use have, particularly where you use have in French and you use be in English, that feels nice. When if you use have, if you Lukey's got a bad neck. If anybody's good at that sounds really dodgy. If anybody's good at neck massage, if you use que, if you use what am I saying? If you use besoin in a verb context with this have, there's always going to be something referencing the de. So either j'en ai besoin, or j'ai besoin de quelque chose, or dont j'ai besoin, or ce dont j'ai besoin. We've spoken about them all, or you know, j'ai besoin de quoi, you know. So if you have besoin there, you are going to need something to acknowledge the fact that that verb uses a de. So the papers of which I have need. So I could teach you, okay, right, so if you have from which or from whom, for example, just use de qui, duquel, de laquelle, desquels, desquels, and if you have of which, of whom, about which, about whom, always use dont. I could teach you that, but that's just a long way of doing it. Just think if your basic original sentence, that means starting with the verb, going into the object, had a de, then when you reverse it round, you will need a dans. Okay? So, les papiers dont j'ai besoin sont dans les tiroirs. The papers I need are in the drawer. Je viens de plus fini, finir, le déjeuner. What did I say you use with a preposition? Predominantly, you will use the infinitive. All right? Je viens de finir is I've just as well. If you don't have that expression under your belt for A-level, get it under your belt for A-level. Please notice I'm coming to finish. I'm coming to finish. Yeah, I'll be with you in a bit. Je viens finir. I'm coming to finish lunch, which is what I used to be known for. Leave it on the table, Luke will finish it. So, je viens finir, I'm coming to finish. Je viens de finir is I've just finished. I am coming from finishing. Yeah, so it's the past tense. Je viens de finir. Good, so that would be the infinitive. Fini, F-I-N-I, would be the past participle without any agreement. So, j'ai fini. I say agreement if you'd have had the previous direct object like earlier. I finished it. The page, I finished it. Je l'ai fini. There'd be an E on the end of fini. Fini is the je and the tu form, or even if we're being adventurous, the passé simple forms in the first and second. So, good. Number 28. Elle s'est lavé les mains. So you're now being quite clever and you go, okay, she's feminine. You might be thinking she's feminine. Okay, so, you know, reflexive verbs can have the S and the E in agreement. And then you might go, oh, but the hands are feminine. Ooh, Luke was talking earlier about if you've got a feminine thing going on, what happens to the verb past participle? None of these are true. This is the one in the middle, elle s'est lavé, no agreement, les mains. Reason number one, when you have a reflexive verb, or a reciprocal verb, so, you know, they speak to each other, it agrees if it's direct. So in the sentence, we got washed, then yes, we are the thing being washed. So nous nous sommes lavés would have an E on the end. Sorry, would have an S on the end. It might have an E and an S if we were two ladies. I got washed, je me suis lavé, or elle s'est lavée would have an E on the end if she washed herself and that was the end of the sentence. Although by definition, metaphysically, her hands belong to her, if it's she washed the hands, then the agreement is with the hands and not with the verb to wash. So in other words, I broke my leg, je me suis cassé la jambe. Je me suis cassé, by the way, means I got out of there, I did a runner. But je me suis cassé la jambe, the ending, je me suis cassé la jambe, even as a lady saying that, I hope she gets well soon, there's no E acute. Sorry, there is an E acute, but there's no additional E. Je me suis cassé. So in other words, if you use a reflexive verb and then bring in an object, je me suis acheté une voiture. A car is feminine. A car is feminine. A woman could say, I bought myself a car. Je me suis acheté une voiture. It's the car that's being bought. It goes after the verb. There's no agreement on the reflexive. Okay? Type reflexive into my channel. The video on that will come up. So, yeah. So, elle s'est lavée, if you stopped there, would have an agreement. Elle s'est lavé les mains doesn't have an agreement. Okay? Je leur ai dit, je l'ai dit, je les ai dit qu'il aurait dû arriver plus tôt. This is just a simple example of when you have a verb form that you could say je l'ai dit, you could say je les ai dit, but is it going to be what we're going to use here? No, because you are communicating. If a little bit like the previous thing, if you have a sentence with a concept in it and a person in it, so I gave him the hug. No, that's stupid. I gave him a hug. I gave him a kiss. I gave her the flowers. Then the person that's the him or the them will always be indirect because the thing that's been given is the hug, the kiss, and the flowers. You can say je l'ai dit, I said it, when you are saying it. You can say je les ai dit when you said them. But I said, I told him. You're so tempted because it's I told him. But what are you telling him? Something, okay? So I told, the only option there is leur, because if you are saying something, you know, what he should have, you know, that he should have arrived earlier, you see, that's what's being told. So therefore, the only option with the communication is the indirect, the only option, because it's indirect. If it's me, me, toi, nous, vous, no one cares, no one cares, no one cares. It could be anything, you know, reflexive, direct, indirect. But if you've got something being communicated, then it obviously needs to be indirect with the person, and that would mean lui ou leur. So, je leur ai dit qu'il aurait dû arriver plus tôt. Notice, il aurait dû, he should have. He should have. Also notice that we do use expressions like aurait dû. I mean, we use that a lot, he should versus he should have, but also notice people seem to think that tense there, the conditional past, is reserved for the if I had known, I would have had to, you know, no, you can use it normally, all right? Oh, speak of which, I didn't realize this was coming next. We've got exactly that situation now. So if he had cheated, he had, he has, he would have won the game. Notice, like I said, you have a past hypothetical. You've got the word if. Be careful with the word if, but if you've got if and a past hypothetical, that means a situation which you are talking about the past, you can no longer change it. It's not if he cheats, if he cheated, if he cheats, he would win. It's if he had cheated, he would have won. You are going to need one of avait or était in your si clause and one of aurait or serait, one of either in the other clause. So basically, you know, you're in your dream sequence clause, in your conditional clause. So if he had cheated, he would have won. Il aurait été. Number 31, dès que. Now, this is interesting. What was the one that we did earlier with quand? What was the one that we did earlier with quand? What number was that? Number 11. So dès que, I think I said at the time, dès que is just another word which when you refer to the future, you will need to reference the future. Could be future past, but you need to reference the future. So in other words, as soon as she arrives, I will explain the situation. Notice, I will explain the situation, you're explaining the situation, therefore I will explain the situation to her. You need the to her. Yeah, don't go off the fact that you say to her in English, because a lot of the time you don't have a to her. I tell him what's going on. You know, it's still je lui. It's not I tell him, je le dis. Great, so dès qu'elle arrivera, future. Yeah, so watch that video on the verb, on the words which use the future, all right? When you say the present in English. I doubt that you are, so aies, soient, ou puis capable de tout faire, okay? So, want, need, doubt, fear, emotional, impersonal. Everything people feel about before logging onto my channel. They want it. They doubt themselves. Should they really do it? Their fear, they're scared. It can get a bit impersonal. It can get very emotional. Yeah. Doubt is a subjunctive. Okay, so je doute que tu, so that you are capable of doing everything. Notice the spelling of everything is T-O-U-T. That referred to one of the ones earlier. So puis there is a subjunctive, and that would make your brain think, oh, can, capable, I am capable. Remember, the verb to be able to is pouvoir. To be capable of requires être and capable. Yeah? I am capable of, je suis capable de many things, let me tell you. I am able to, je peux. It's just the verb to be able to. We don't remember that largely because we forget that in English, I can is the present. It's a corruption. It's not a corruption. It's a borrow from Middle German, which came across. I'm not a German speaker. I think the verb is it können or kennen? I don't know. There's a can verb in German. Somebody please write underneath if you're a German speaker. Which is where we get that from. Now, kennen is no, isn't it? There's kennen and wissen. I forget. Ugh, I apologize. It's not my language. Yeah. I've got about 5 going on. I don't want to do a 6th. Although I was going to do Russian, but I must admit, after what's currently going on, I'm a little bit. But we are against Putin as a regime. We are not against the Russian people. Many of whom would absolutely adore this not to be the case. Most of whom. So, lovely. So in other words, je doute que tu sois. Yeah? Subjunctive. Notice the spelling S-O-I-S. Be careful with your spellings. S-O-I-S, S-O-I-S, S-O-I-T. Good. Il est parti sans... So he went... Oh, sorry. Les enfants ont fait... blank, tout, toute, tous leur possible pour gagner. This again, what was the number that we came across earlier with the two, number 2, wasn't it? If you are using the word all, and it's just the general concept of all, it would be the singular masculine. It's confusing because it's the children plural, so you think, oh, their plural, whatever. No, 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 no. You know, they did everything possible. Tout, T-O-U-T, okay? Il est parti sans blank. He left without il, sans leur, sans eux. Sans eux. This is an object pronoun, so remember, with me, avec moi, with you, avec toi, avec lui, avec elle. Lui and elle crop up elsewhere. Lui means to him, as we've, well, indirect him, as we've seen earlier, or to her in the middle of a sentence. Elle also is the subject pronoun. She's going, elle va. Nous, subject and object. Vous, subject and object, also in the middle. So nous parlons, il nous donne, il parle avec nous. But the one that you need for the they, when it becomes the them, in other words, at the end of a good juicy preposition, is eux, E-U-X, eux. So I'm speaking with them, je leur parle, or je parle avec eux, à eux, okay? So in other words, after the preposition, il est parti sans eux, without them, right? Number 35, bien que nous, blank, soyons, ayons, sommes riches, nous sommes arrivés. Okay, so basically, bien que takes subjunctive, end of. Yeah? Bien que takes subjunctive. Okay, avoir, whatever. The last bit's just the description. Okay, greedy bastards. We don't. There's nothing to change there. It's about the fact that we are. Bien que. Bien que takes subjunctive. End of. So although we are, because it's an adjective, bien que nous soyons. Yeah. Not nous ayons, because that would be subjunctive have. Not nous sommes, that's normal we. Good. Il nous a dit. Now, we've had an a with a d here earlier, but the difference here is you are telling someone to do something. And the verb dire, when it goes into somebody, telling somebody to do something, we use de. Il nous a dit de l'attendre à la gare. So he told us to wait, would be il nous a dit d'attendre. Il nous a dit de l'attendre. Notice your muscle memory will get used to saying dire à. Alors moi, je vais le dire à quelqu'un. I'm going to say to somebody. Moi, je vais le dire à quelqu'un. Notice muscle memories can often overlap and do all kinds of different things, which is why you need to say the whole thought from beginning to end. So he asked, he said to me, il nous a dit de le faire. He told me to do it. Il m'a dit de le faire. So this one is de. I am too young to drive a car. I wish. No, I don't actually. No. I wouldn't go that far back in time. I wouldn't go back in time at all. Maybe physically, but not mentally in a million years. Je suis trop. I would go back to March 2020. Yeah, things were perfect then. Lovely. So, je suis trop jeune. So you've got à, pour, or de. So which one do you think it's going to be? If you look at the feeling of in order to, if it's got an in order to feeling to it in French, that would be a pour largely, okay? So, je suis trop jeune pour conduire une voiture. I'm going to the bathroom to pee. Pardon me. I'm going to the bathroom in order to pee. Sounds quite heavy, okay? But you could, in theory, say it. So if you could get in an in order to feeling to it, it would be pour. Elegant French, you guys doing your A-levels would need afin de or afin que. Alors moi je vais aux toilettes afin de faire pipi. Ridiculous, but or afin que plus a different person. So in order that he can. I'm going to the bathroom so that she can pee. Okay. Afin qu'elle puisse. But yeah, so pour if it's got an in order to feeling. Okay. Le trottoir était couvert de, avec ou à. This is a very common one. If it's covered with, you want to say with, but you're not going to say with. In French, you're going to say couvert de. Okay, so trottoir being in English pavement, in American sidewalk. Okay, so le trottoir était couvert de papier. So the pavement was covered in paper. I wonder what's on them. Number 39. Je regrette que tu aies, que tu sois arrivé si tard. Regret is an emotion, not one that it is useful to dwell on because we cannot change the past. But we can actively make amends for certain things. or kill the fucker. Of course we can. So in the words of our friend Edith Piaf, non. Finish the song for me. Je ne regrette rien. Non, je ne regrette. So she's basically regrette. It's an emotion. It's an emotion. Don't just learn I am happy that gives me the subjunctive. So I regret that. So when you have a subjunctive coming up because of the emotion, decide whether it's a present subjunctive or a past. So you arrived, normally it would be tu es arrivé, tu es arrivé. This is I regret that you arrived with an auxiliary in the subjunctive. So the subjunctive past. I'm sorry that you arrived so late. Ouais, je regrette que tu sois arrivé si tard. Lovely. Say that from beginning to end. Le résultat dépend. No, this is a really common one. This is a massively common error. Number 40. Dépendre de. Yeah, we're done now. Dépendre de. If you depend, it depends on the situation. Ça dépend de la situation. Dépendre de. Le résultat dépend. Notice dépend. De with an accent de. So this is a sample of the rest of the A-level question podcast. If you find them useful, you want 13 more. So as you say, it's not just answering the answer. It's giving you reasons why you can do a load of other stuff using the grammar. Okay, so if you fancy more of the same, 13 more of these chapters, then do email me. The email will be underneath in the description, and order them. And can I remind you that when these first came out, and hopefully this will no longer be the case by the time you see this, then I was going to give a third of the money to the Ukraine. God bless them. All right, speak soon.